Chapter 2. Anne joins the little camp. Aunt Fanny soon told Anne about Timmy's ear and the big collar of cardboard that had caused all the trouble. Anne couldn't help smiling. "Oh, Aunt Fanny, George is quite crazy about old Tim, isn't she? I'll go and meet her at 12, and of course I'll camp with her for a day or two. It's lovely weather, and I'd like to. I expect Uncle Quentin will be glad to have us out of the house." "How are Julian and Dick?" asked her aunt. She's very fond of Anne's two brothers, George's cousins. "Will they be coming down here at all these holidays?" "Oh, I don't know," said Anne. "They're still in France, you know, on a schoolboy's tour. I feel funny without them. George will be cross to hear they probably won't be coming to Keren. She'll just have to put up with me." At 12 o'clock, Anne was standing patiently at the end of Carter's Lane. He ran to the common, and then ended in a small, winding path that led to nowhere in particular. Big gorse bushes grew here and there, and slender birch trees. Anne, her belongings strapped to her back, and a bag in her hand, looked over the common to see if she could spy George coming. There was no sign of her. "Blow," said Anne. "I suppose she's changed her mind or something. Perhaps her watch has stopped, and she doesn't know the time. She ought to, though, by looking at the sun. How long shall I wait?" She sat down by a big gorse bush, out of the hot sun. She hadn't been there for more than a minute when she heard a hissing sound. "Psst!" Anne sat up at once. The sound came from the other side of the bush. She got up and walked round it. Half under a prickly branch was George and Timmy. "Hello," said Anne, surprised. "Didn't you see me when I arrived?" "Hello, Tim, darling. How's your poor old ear?" "Oh, doesn't he look quaint old dear in that collar, George?" George scrambled out of the bush. "I hid there just in case father and mother should come with you and try to take me back," she said. "I wanted to make quite sure they weren't waiting somewhere a little way away. I'm glad you've come, Anne." "Of course I've come," said Anne. "I wouldn't stay alone at Keren Cottage while you were camping out. Besides, I understand how you feel about Timmy. The collar's a jolly good idea, of course, but it does make him look comical. I think he looks rather dear in it. I do really." George was almost relieved that Anne had not laughed at Timmy, and that most people had. She smiled at her cousin, and Timmy licked her until Anne really had to push him away. "Let's go," said George, scrambling up. "I've got a lovely camping place, Anne. You'll like it. It's near a little spring too, so there's plenty of water for Timmy to drink, and us too." "Did you bring any more food?" "I didn't really bring much." "Yes, I brought heaps," said Anne. "Aunt Fanny made me. She's not cross with you, George. I didn't see your father. He was shut up in his study." George's spirits suddenly rose. She gave Anne a friendly punch. "This is going to be fun. Timmy's ears will soon be better, and he loves camping out as much as we do. I've really found a good place, about the loneliest on the common. Nobody near us for miles." They set off together, Timmy at their heels, darting everywhere, now and again, and when he smelt a rabbit. "When are Julian and Dick coming down?" asked George. "In a few days. Timmy's ear will be all right. Then we can go back to Keren Cottage to welcome the boys and have some fun there." "They may not be coming down at all these holes," said Anne, and George's face fell at once. She stopped and stared at Anne in dismay. "Not coming? But they always come in the holes. Or we go somewhere together," she said. "They must come. I shall be miserable without Ju and Dick." "Well, they're still in France on a tour or something," said Anne. "We shall hear if they're staying on there or coming down to Keren when we get back to the cottage. Don't look so woebegone, George." But George felt woebegone. The holidays stretched before her, suddenly seeming long and dreary. Her two boy cousins were always such fun. They had such wonderful adventures together, and now they weren't coming. "We shan't have any adventures at all if the boys don't come," she said in a small voice. "I shan't mind that," said Anne. "I'm the peaceful one, not always on the lookout for something to happen, like you and the boys. Perhaps these holidays will be quite unexcited without even the smell of an adventure." Oh, George, cheer up. Don't look so mournful. You'd better send a letter to Julian and Dick if you feel so badly about it. I've got a good mind to, said George. I can't imagine Holes without the boys. Why, we shan't be the famous five, if they don't come. Woof, said Timmy, quite agreeing. He sat down and tried to scratch his ear, but the big collar prevented him. He didn't seem to mind and ran off after a rabbit quite happily. I think you're most upset about that collar than Timmy, said Anne as they walked along. Are we really getting near this place of yours, George? It's a jolly long way. We go up this hill in front of us and then drop down to a little copse, said George. There's a funny old cottage nearby, quite ruined and empty. At first, I thought perhaps people lived there. There's a big old rambling rose climbing all over it, even inside. I suppose the people who used to live there planted it. They walked up the hill and down again, following curved rabbit paths. Better look out for adders, said Anne. This is just the kind of place for them. My word, it's hot. George, is there anywhere to bathe near here? A pool or anything? I don't know. We could explore and see, said George. I did bring my swimsuit just in case. Look, you can see part of the old cottage now. My camp is fairly near there. I thought I'd better camp near the spring. They were soon at George's rough little camp. The tent was up, and she had made a bed inside of springy heather. A mug, a bag of dog biscuits, a few tins and a loaf of bread were at one end of the tent. It didn't seem to Anne as if George had brought very much. She felt glad that she had managed to pack such a lot of things. Aunt Fanny cuts dozens and dozens of sandwiches, said Anne. She said if we kept them in this tin they wouldn't go stale, and would last us a day or two until we went back. I'm hungry. Shall we have some now? They sat out in the sun, munching the ham sandwiches. Anne had brought tomatoes too, and they took a bite at the sandwich and then a bite at the tomato. Timmy had to make do with a handful of dog biscuits and a half a sandwich every now and again. After a bit, he got up and wandered off. Where's he going? Asked Anne. To look for a rabbit. No, probably to get a drink, said George. The spring is in the direction he's gone. I'm thirsty too. Let's take the mug and get a drink ourselves. They went off with the mug, Anne following George through the thick heather. The little spring was a lovely one. It had evidently been used by the people who had once lived in the old cottage and was built round with a big white stone so that the spring ran through a little stony channel as clear as crystal. Ooh, it's as cold as ice, said Anne. Simply delicious. I could drink gallons of this. They lay on the heather, out in the sun, talking. When they came back from the spring, Timmy wandered off by himself again. It's so peaceful here, said Anne. Nobody near us for miles, just the birds and the rabbits. This is what I like. There's hardly a sound, said George, yawning. And just as she said that, there came a noise in the distance, a sharp sound, like metal on stone. It came again, and then stopped. What's that, do you suppose? Said George, sitting up. I can't imagine, said Anne. Anyway, it's a long way away. Everything is so still that sounds carry from quite a distance. The sharp noises began again in a little while, and then stopped. The girls shut their eyes and slept. There wasn't a sound now, except the pop, pop, pop of gorse pods exploding in the sun and sending out their little black seeds. George woke up when Timmy came back. He sat down heavily at her feet, and she woke up with a jump. Timmy, don't, she said. Get off my feet. You made me jump. Timmy obligingly removed himself, then picked up something he had dropped, lay down and began gnawing at it. George looked to see what it was. Timmy, that's a bone. Where did you get it? She said. Anne, did you bring a bone for Tim? What? What did you say? Said Anne, half asleep. A bone? No, I didn't. Why? Because Timmy's found one, said George, and it's a bone that had cooked meat on it, so it's not a rabbit or anything Timmy's caught. Timmy, where did you get it? Woof, said Timmy. offering the bone to George, thinking that she too might like a gnaw, as she seemed so interested in it. "Do you suppose someone else is camping near us?" asked Anne, sitting up and yawning. "After all, bones don't grow in the heather. That's quite a good meaty one, too. Timmy, have you stolen it from another dog?" Timmy thumped his tail on the ground and went on with his bone. He looked pleased with himself. "It's a rather an old bone," said George. "It's smelly. Go away, Tim. Take it further off." The sharp metallic noises suddenly began again, and George frowned. "I believe there is someone camping near us, Anne. Come on, let's do a bit of exploring and find out. I vote we move our camp if there are other people near. Come on, Timmy. That's right. Bury that horrible bone. This way, Anne."